Welcome to Music 320 Week 2, and this video I'm entitling Anatomy of an Object, where we're going to look at the internal structure of an object. And to do this, I'm going to create an empty patch, and please feel free to follow along with on your own computer, make an empty patch and recreate the objects and components that I put in the max patch, and that will, I think, help you understand things better. I'm going to begin with an object that's rather complicated and which has multiple arguments and multiple inlets and multiple outlets. And so I'm going to use the make note object, which has, as you can see here, 3 arguments, which is a default velocity, which I will put as 80, remembering that velocities are values between 0 and 127. 0 is actually an note off, so we want to use that. A duration, and durations are in milliseconds, so I'm going to make this 1,000 milliseconds, or 1 second long, and I'm going to put a channel of 1. And then I'm going to add another object, which is a companion object to make note, which is the note out object, which takes an argument of a channel. And I'm going to join the 3 outlets of make note to the 3 inlets of note out. So I'm going to now make a bunch of messages. There's a 1, there's a 2. I'm typing M each time to create my messages. Those are going to be my possible channels that I'm going to use. Then I'm going to have durations of 2,000. I'm going to select that and do Command D to duplicate it and change that to 100. Those are default velocities that I can use. Then I'm going to have another message which is 120. This is a velocity. Duplicate that, Command D, to get 20. Okay, and then I'm just going to put 72 and 75. Some pitches that I can put in. All right, I just saved that so I can, if I wreck it, I can get it back. Okay, so the way objects work is that they have default values internally. They have placeholders. So within the make note object, there's a placeholder for a pitch when it comes in. There's a placeholder for a velocity, a placeholder for a duration, and a placeholder for a channel. And when you supply default values, those placeholders get filled with the default values. Now, the way objects work is that one generally changes values in all of the inlets other than the first inlet to alter the internal structure of the make note object, and then it's only when a message comes in the first inlet, the leftmost inlet, that the object actually performs its action. So I can be clicking on Command E, this, and there's no output. I'm just going to go back and remember I'm going to press the 120, the 2000, and the 1 so that I know when I last checked. But basically, whatever comes in here alters the internal setting, and then when we click on this, we'll hear a loud note for 2,000 milliseconds on channel 1. And if we click on this, we will hear a loud note for 2,000 milliseconds on channel 1, but the pitch is 75, which is E flat. If I click on this now, I'm going in and I'm changing that value of 2,000 to 100. Very, very short It's a tenth of a second. But the note doesn't sound yet. It only sounds when we do this. If I do this to change the 120 into a 20, it's very quiet. Very quiet. Okay, so the way these objects operate, we put values, generally speaking, from right to left. And then when the object actually performs its actions, it puts out values from right to left. So when I click on this, what actually happens is the channel value gets passed to node out, the velocity value gets passed to node out, and the pitch value gets passed to node out. Then make note waits the duration, and it does the same thing again. It passes the channel, the velocity, and the pitch. I can actually look to see what values were last going in there because I have my patch probes on in my debugger. You can turn those on if you want. Okay, now, so that should all be clear. And this happens with 99% of objects. Put your values in from right to left, and when you finally get to the first inlet, the action actually occurs and all of the internal structures of the object have been updated. Now what happens if I put a list in? I'm going to put a list of 78, 100, 100 is a good velocity, 5,000, and 2. I'm going to very quickly do something here. I'm going to type an I. I'm going to go no. I'm going to go program out channel 2, and I'm just going to very quickly change my channel 2 to a different timbre so I can tell the difference between channel 1 and channel 2. Now what actually happens if I push this list of 4 values into the first inlet? Well, in actual fact, what the object does is it takes that list and it distributes it across the inlets from right to left. So it takes this message and says, okay, I've got a list of 4. So let's put the 2 as the channel, the 5,000 as the duration, the 100 as the velocity, and the 78 as the pitch. And at that point, it happens very quickly, the make note object will generate its note, and it will output the channel, the velocity, and the pitch, wait the specified duration, and put out the same values. So this is a way of packing together a whole series of values, and we will get pitch 78 is F sharp, velocity is quite loud, duration is quite long, and channel 2 will have a different timbre on it. I'm going to duplicate that and say 60, 50 is quiet, 200 is short, channel 1, and we'll put that in here. Very quiet. In a different timbre. Okay, so now what is actually happening? If we want to see this in action, we want to actually see this sort of ordering of outputs from right to left, we can do this. We can enable our debugger in the debug menu, and then we can select a patch chord, and we can add a watch point break. And it puts a little 1 in there. And what happens then is that when we click on this, well, I'll show you what happens. I'm going to click on this. And it shows us down here, down here, down here. So it shows us the sequence of how messages get passed from one object to another in a sort of auto step fashion. So I'm going to do it again. Click on this. Goes there, then here, then here, and then here. And we hear the note. Okay, and that's a useful tool. I'm going to clear my breakpoints, or my watch points. So you can read more about the debugger if you're interested in using it, but you can see how that message ordering from right to left coming out of an object and going into the next object actually works really well for Max. If we follow this, if Max follows this protocol, then it ensures that all of the internal structures of the object are altered before the first inlet gets activated. Okay. Yeah, so I think that's you know, whenever we're dealing with objects, it's good to sort of abstract this, not just that the object does this, but to think to yourself, okay, this object has two inlets. And well, let's put a plus object in. Plus is here. It's got two inlets. The first inlet is going to cause the addition to take place. The second inlet is going to change the internal number, the stored number that we are adding to. So if I have some number boxes here, I to create some integer boxes. Put them in. Okay, so the first thing we have to realize is that when we don't put an argument into our object, there is a default value. Most of the time, this default value is 0. So if I just say, well, let's use this plus object and let's put in 123, 132, and we'll see what it gets added to. Well, it's getting added to 0 because we didn't supply it with a default value. And it's not until either we supply a default value or we put a value in, such as 24. Now we notice that nothing changes here. We have to know that we put 24 in there. Right? So now if I type 132 and hit return, I get an addition to a value and not just to 0. So similarly, and this is just sort of working logically, if I happen to put two numbers into the first inlet here, they will get distributed across the inlets. So in a sense, typing a list of 1020 would mean that 20 gets put in here and then 10 is added to it. So I can add two numbers together by making a list, and the answer is 30. Okay, so that's just, I wanted to cover that sort of internal structure of how messages are passed in Max MSP. The whole notion of right to left ordering is very important. You can mess things up if you're not careful with your left to right ordering. If you put a value into the first inlet before you put a value into the second inlet, then the action will be performed with whatever values were currently in the object, which might be 0 or might be something else. So it's important to always remember, put in your values on the right before you put your value in to the left.